Typically, we have two meteorologists in the studio today. Typically, if we had Craig Moeller and Taylor Stephenson in here, it would be the highlight of our month. Unfortunately, they are here under just devastating circumstances, I think is fair to say. So welcome back, guys. Go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, we'll talk about the tropics. And Taylor, it's great to have you. And we were talking about this stuff off camera. And that's one thing with 13 News Now. We work as a team of meteorologists, Tim, Evan, Hunter, Taylor, and myself. This is an incredibly, incredibly dangerous situation for Jamaica.
I mean, this is pushing the limits of physics when it comes to how strong this storm is, still at 185 miles per hour. And we talked about this, as you said, off camera, is that usually we have what we call upwelling. When those big storms churn up that deep, cold water from the ocean up to the surface, it kind of honestly weakens it because there's so much warm water all the way through. It's actually maintaining and gaining strength.
It's very unusual. Typically with a slow moving system, you get that churn, you get the turnover, and it starts to lose a little bit of the strength. Hasn't been the case. Let's give you the 11 o'clock update. It's out now. Maximum winds 185 miles per hour. Those gusts now up to 220 miles per hour. I'm trying to think of a time when I saw, and again, I've got a 36-year career in this, tracking the tropics since I've been here in Hampton Roads super closely, getting those types of winds, gusts to 220 miles per hour with a landfalling system. It is almost unheard of. Connor, you had asked before about this relative to the strongest storms in the Atlantic. We get some super typhoons. You know, they can be monstrous out in the Pacific. In the Atlantic, the strongest hurricane to make landfall in the United States, the Labor Day storm of 1935, hit the Florida Keys. At that point, it had a central pressure of 892 and winds of 185 with higher gusts. Look at where we are right now with this. 892, the wind. So this matches the Labor Day storm of 35 as
1935.
That's for the United States. I mean, this is about as strong as hurricanes can get, and to make the landfall at this, it's incredible. People talk about Andrew. Okay, Andrew initially they thought was a Cat 4. They upped it to a Cat 5 after going back and researching. Camille, a huge storm that hit in the late 60s in the Gulf Coast. That one weaker than this. This is a monster.
Is that one of those century-defining storms?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Gilbert was the big one to hit Jamaica previously. And we talked about this, 1988, September 12th. That, for islanders, Jamaicans that have lived their entire lives there in Jamaica, you know, they talk pre-Gilbert and post-Gilbert, talking about the situation there. They're going to talk, I'm sure, in those terms about Melissa going forward.
And I think to put in perspective for like modern day history of the United States, this is a lower central pressure, so stronger than Hurricane Katrina, which just had its 20th anniversary just a couple months ago. So for those who remember that, this is stronger. And even Katrina, even though Katrina made landfall as a Cat 3, obviously not as strong as this is going to make landfall as a Category 5, but at Katrina's strongest in the Gulf, it was a Category 5, but this central pressure is lower than Katrina. And unfortunately, this is a small island. I made the reference yesterday, and I looked at the distance between the north side of the island to the south side, and it's basically distance between Norfolk and Richmond. So it's a very tiny island that's getting all of the impacts of this Category 5 storm. You're talking storm surge up to 13 feet on top of days of rainfall that could get up to about 15 to 30 inches. Excuse me. Then you're also talking about hurricane force winds that are, you know, could be up to 100 miles per hour plus, especially in that eye wall. What Craig is looking at now, that's the current flights going on right now. Is it the weather, the hurricane center?
Yes, there's a Hurricane Hunter. You can see that wind speed was taken right there on the outskirts at 58's, not the maximum winds, obviously. But I wanted to show where you see that blue dot there, kind of the outer edge of the hurricane force winds. But once you get in that central pressure, flight level found to be 893, and they were able to find a pressure a little bit lower than that, down to 892. So I wanted to share that with you. Let's talk about the forecast track. And as we do, again, this system just unbelievably powerful. I want to go ahead and pull up the 11 o'clock track on this and give you the statistics. We talked about the winds, those gusts to 220 miles per hour. That's hard to wrap your mind around. Again, the wind field expanding out about 30 miles from the diameter, so or from the center. It's got a 30-mile radius out from the center that the hurricane force winds are, but you're looking at 185 mile per hour winds. Now going forward, it is still set to take aim on Cuba, likely making a landfall later this evening or through the overnight as a Cat 5, possibly a Cat 4. Once it moves inland, it will weaken. It'll come out on the other side as a Cat 3 early Wednesday morning. Beyond that, it's still the southern Bahamas that are going to get hit. You see that through Wednesday and then eventually up towards Bermuda.
Yeah.
So this is going to have a lot of impact on a lot of folks, but it's Jamaica that we're so concerned with. And again, I'll tell you what, as we take a look at that track, and let's go back to the loop here. I'm going to put this up and let you see how close it's coming. Landfall is going to happen here in the next, probably hour and a half or so. It looks like it's already there, but keep in mind the eye is actually still a little bit offshore. So I'm going to loop this, and Taylor, let's run through some of these key points. You see the loop here as it's coming in and what the Hurricane Center is saying about this. I think it's incredible when we take a look at this. So let me pull this up real quick, and we can run through some of these. Headline: this is an extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation. Take cover now. They also message remain sheltered.
Right, and it's saying catastrophic winds with total structural failure is likely near the path of Melissa's center. And again, you can see that on that loop, that center on the southwestern portions of the island. Catastrophic flash flooding, landslides, and destructive winds are expected across the remainder of the island, causing widespread infrastructural damage, power and communication outages, and isolation of communities. Along the southern coast, life-threatening storm surge and damaging waves are expected throughout the day.
I want to come back to something, Connor, just to, again, keep this in perspective and help folks understand this in Hampton Roads. We have storm shelters, and over my course of time, I've spent time talking with school officials. Sometimes the high schools, they have the storm shelters. They have different areas. You talk about windows. Here in developed, a very developed country, the United States, and our infrastructure in place, windows are rated to withstand winds of maybe 120 miles per hour. They're like, okay, this is good for a hurricane shelter. You're talking about 185 mile per hour maximum sustained winds. Those windows aren't going to stand up to that type of thing.
Right.
You're looking at our broadcast tower. The one right here that sends a signal over to our big tower out in Suffolk that sends it out across Hampton Roads. That's rated to, I think, 115 or 120 mile per hour winds. When we've had tropical storms, you can hear the vibration. It starts making kind of weird whistling and humming sounds and everything. Winds like this, what are going to come through and what are coming through with this, wipe all that stuff out. So when we talk about complete structural failure, this is what we're talking about. And these are structures in the most highly developed nation, arguably in the world, you would say.
Right.
So in Jamaica, there are some areas that are very highly developed. And unfortunately, just like here in the United States, there are some that maybe don't have all of the infrastructure in place. But there are certainly parts of Jamaica. You think about Haiti, parts of Cuba, some of the more rural areas where folks maybe don't have these structures in place to withstand this.
And I think that one comment I actually saw on one of our streams was that some people kind of related it to Western North Carolina with Helene, the isolation of communities. We have to realize this is not just a region that has beautiful beaches. It has a lot of mountains. Landslides, mudslides will trap people in those communities, but also you're talking about power outages for days, if not weeks, in this area. Yeah.
I mean, to your point, Taylor,
right.
We're talking weeks and in some cases months without power. So that's the type of damage to the infrastructure that we have to consider. And we focus so much on Jamaica, and we need to because that's where the heart of this is coming through. But we've already seen the flooding in Haiti and in the Dominican Republic. And again, the next line here from the Hurricane Center, the key messaging, Haiti and Dominican Republic, catastrophic flash flooding, landslides still expected in southwestern Haiti, southern portions of the DR. So again, we talk so much about Jamaica, you see where the center is, but even some of the areas outside of the actual heart of this hurricane are going to be heavily, heavily impacted.
And I don't want the people of eastern Jamaica thinking that we're not thinking about them too, because this is putting y'all on the dirty side of the storm, right? And so we're talking still very heavy rainfall. It's been ongoing for the past couple of days. The potential maybe even for spin-up tornadoes in a very intense storm like this is also a possibility in those areas. So places down in Jamaica, like Kingston, the most populous area in Jamaica, it's already feeling those impacts, even though it won't probably get those extreme hurricane force sustained winds.
You know, for folks in eastern Cuba, we mentioned it's going to be later tonight that landfall will take place. Probably tonight for eastern Cuba, around maybe 11 o'clock or so, sometime later this evening. And for that, National Hurricane Center is cautioning heavy rainfall, flash flooding, landslides expected there as well. So you need to be prepared. Life-threatening storm surge, damaging winds likely to begin later today. That's in Cuba. That landfall coming through later this evening. After that, southeastern and central Bahamas, Turks and Caicos. Everybody in this path needs to be alert.
And unfortunately, according to ABC, this is already a deadly storm. People have passed away in Haiti due to the very heavy rainfall, flash flooding. So this is a deadly storm, and unfortunately hitting a highly populated area in the Caribbean. Like you said, there's at least 4 to 5 nations that are in the path of this. Turks and Caicos, also Dominican Republic. So, I mean, this is going to be something that we're watching for a while. And you can see from our live image there. Is that in Jamaica, Sarah?
This is actually a video from Haiti.
Yeah. Video
this
from
is
Haiti.
What they're feeling.
Got you. So this is a video from Haiti, and you can see, I mean, just how much water is just standing there. And that is from the outer bands of Melissa. That's not even where the landfall will be.
We talked about this. We think a lot of times about the direct impacts with the violent winds and the flooding rains, but some of the secondary things, already the flooding in Haiti, we were talking last hour that this is threatening their food production and their agricultural regions as well. This is a country that honestly is struggling a lot of times to keep their population well fed.
Right.
And this type of devastation wipes out food access to thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people.
Food access and food storage when you have widespread power outages, communication is impacted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing too is that as people who do not live in that region, we have to be very sensitive to the fact that, okay, will the tourist areas be cleaned up? Sure. We have to think about the people who live there. Their schools will be shut down for weeks, if not months. Their houses are destroyed. I mean, think about the impacts of Katrina here in the United States. People were homeless after that. This is a very large possibility that people will be homeless after this situation. I mean, this is one of the most powerful storms to ever churn in the Atlantic Basin.
And this was one of the situations we talked about earlier with Gilbert coming through back in 1988. 100,000 homes destroyed, and there were about 500,000 displaced. So to your point, that again, a major, major concern going forward. We'll take another look at the track here. And again, this is with the 11 o'clock advisory. Still a powerful, but an increasingly strong Category 5 hurricane. Winds of 185, gusting to 220. This is almost unheard of. Again, this matches the strongest hurricane to ever make landfall in the U.S. As we mentioned earlier, it comes across Jamaica, likely still a Cat 5, even with some weakening crossing Jamaica. Still a Cat 5 as it crosses the straits there between Jamaica and Cuba, rolls into eastern Cuba tonight, crosses over, may come out still as a major hurricane, Cat 3 on the other side of Cuba, and then works across the southern Bahamas. A lot of wind and rain for the Turks and Caicos, and then Bermuda. I will say Bermuda is so battle-tested with this. I mean, it's going to be quick in, quick out. They'll hunker down for the night, come out the next day, and kind of. I think Bermuda will be in better shape, but the fact that it impacts all of these areas.
Right. And the problem with Melissa from the get-go was its very slow movement. I mean, moving about 1 to 3 miles an hour at some points, gave it multiple days of rain for those countries. Finally, now moving about 9 to 10 miles an hour, which is kind of the highest you can go on a treadmill if you think about it like that. So it's starting to get some forward speed, but this slow progression has been the reason why the impacts have been so widespread, but also a long duration event as well.
Yeah, it sure has been. And Connor and Sarah, we were talking at the 10 o'clock update, said, maybe we'll see a little forward uptick in speed. So now it is up to 9 miles per hour. So at least
Good
some of
news.
the rainfall,
Yep.
maybe not quite as bad as if it were moving at, say, 5 or 3 miles per hour.
Right.
At least there is some motion. Take a look at the wind field. I know you've got it up there, Sarah, but you can see, again, hurricane force winds overtaking the island and eventually, again, right through the central part of Jamaica, the country. They're really ravished with that. Montego Bay is going to be on the left side of the system. A little, and I mean very little, blessing in just its proximity to the dead center of the storm. But this is still going to be, I think, devastating for Montego Bay. And again, so much of the country here, Jamaica, dealing with this. As we head into the evening, that's when the winds are forecast to pull past Jamaica, and then by 11 o'clock or so, this is from the Hurricane Center, their wind field forecast brings hurricane winds in there across the eastern part of Cuba, and then takes aim at the the southern Bahamas. Turks and Caicos out there on the edge feeling the tropical storm force winds. Look at this, making the run towards Bermuda. Now think about how slow moving this thing has been to this point, but by this point it is racing along now. As we go Thursday evening, the winds basically come in and exit, just kind of glancing by Bermuda, and then we'll see big improvements by sunrise on
And
Friday.
you saw Craig show the winds there in Cuba, and that's why 1,000 troops that were in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, were evacuated earlier this week. I mean, because even though it's not, like he said, not going to be as strong of a storm passing through Cuba, still major hurricane impacts. And a lot of times when those storms hit the friction of land, they start to really spread out. And so the impacts maybe felt a little bit wider than it is right now there in Jamaica.
And the other consequence of the friction with land, we talked about this as well, tornadoes.
Yeah.
So you can get isolated. They're typically weaker, although with a storm generating this much
power,
energy,
yeah.
you might even get some slightly stronger ones. But typically with landfalling tropical systems, you look for EFOs, maybe EF1, something like that. They're not very powerful.
Yeah.
They're quick spin up. They're very low level. In this case, there might be a few of these bands that could spark maybe a slightly stronger tornado, but it's just the randomness and how quick they can spin up on those bands.
I mean, even Hurricane Katrina, going back to what U.S. history, produced EF2 tornadoes in its path just because of how strong that storm was as well.
That's absolutely shocking when you told me that this morning, Craig. I had no idea that this type of thing could lead to tornadoes.
Oh, yeah.
We've got mudslides, we've got tornadoes, we've got flooding, both from rainfall and from coastal flooding. I mean, it really is everything you could possibly imagine in terms of a disaster impacting a country. Taylor, you mentioned how there has already been fatalities.
Yes.
CNN Weather and the Weather Channel both reporting 7 deaths. 3 in Haiti, 1 in the Dominican Republic, 3 in Jamaica during storm preparations as people kind of rush to try to get ready for this.
So again, and I don't mean to react to that, but that just hit me again.
Me too.
Something else that we have to think about. Again, we talk about the immediate impacts with this coming
Right.
through. But in addition, even cleanup and recovery, somebody cutting a limb off a branch that or off a part of their roof or something, that tree that they were chopping shifts and hurts people.
Right.
That happens all the time following these large storms. And when you have something with as large of an area impacted, there will be more things, unfortunately, associated with that. So, as we speak, as we are broadcasting live right now, there are folks huddled down, hunkered down in Jamaica that are absolutely terrified right now with the wind doing what it's doing right now. And then again, you've got the storm surge, the flooding rains, the potential for mudslides, landslides. It's all in play with this system.
And Connor, you and I talked about yesterday how the real work is going to begin after Melissa passes through. All the devastation that will probably be left behind in Jamaica, especially the western parts of Jamaica, is something that we're going to have to think about for a while. Like you said, it's going to be post-Gilbert, before Gilbert, post-Gilbert, before Melissa, post-Melissa. I would be very surprised if there is not as much damage as I'm thinking in my brain. As you said, when you just mentioned, Connor, that 3 people have already died in Jamaica, my heart sank when you said that. Because this is one of the hardest parts about being a meteorologist, is that you can do as much forecasting as you can, but people's lives will be impacted in that way, and it just breaks my heart.
Yeah, you guys have done an incredible job blending those two things. Professional forecasting, keeping everybody up to date, while also lending a human perspective to this situation. I mean, this will be nothing short of a humanitarian crisis, and it will take a global effort to help Jamaica get back on its feet. So like you said, the real work begins afterwards. Guys, anything else?
I just think, again, this is going to be something that impacts Jamaica today as far as the actual weather event itself, but this is going to be something that is going to be a much longer derived thing, not just as far as the humanitarian stuff goes, but we're talking services. You know, some places will probably be inaccessible for weeks, if not months. Power outages will exist. There will be isolated areas that are cut off for a long time. So again, I would just be prepared to hear these follow-up stories, and maybe if you are able, be prepared to help this island and these folks recover from this.
Yeah, very well said, guys. Our meteorology team hard at work today and every day to bring you all of this news that you might need. You can find them on 13 News Now Plus at any time. If you want to find updates, they will be there for you on our digital platform.